Thank you for visiting my channel. Once again, please do not forget to press the subscribe button, give a thumbs up for like, leave a comment, a good comment, and please do share. Now, today's video is going to be on a message. I'm going to deliver a message that I got last week as I was doing my walk, my daily walk. I wanted to upload a video on the masks, but I guess I'll do that later on in the week. And I know that I did say that when I did the last video, but somehow I just got to go where my guides lead me. Now, for those of you who are used to my channel, you know that I will often spend 5 to 10 minutes giving my regular spiel, introducing myself, telling you what I like, what I don't like, and what you can do is fast forward and then you can get to the meat of my video. I promise you it's going to be an interesting one today. Now, my name is Winifred Davis and I like to read. I like to say that all the time because I do read most of what I have to tell you because I don't want to forget anything. I have been a shaman, psychic medium, traditional and spiritual healer and counselor for the past 37 years. It's going to be 38 years in another couple of months. Now, I am also an author, essayist, poet, and former spoken word movement performer. Now, I subscribe to no religion, and always remember that. I subscribe to no religion. I believe in universal justice and truth. The truth has no my side, your side. It stands unopposed. Universal justice. There are no exceptions to its rules, but with the imposter justice of man, there's always an exception to every rule. Now, I'm not here to lead anyone or to convert anyone, because each man must evolve according to his own light. I do not wish to be a leader of anything or anyone, and I do not want anyone to lead me. My duty is only to my conscience, and the conscience is the light that each of us was given at creation with that free will. That conscience guides our free will, and that is why we are each of us responsible for the well-being of our soul. Each of us is responsible for all our actions. We cannot blame our general, king, country, president, parents, brother, or the bully. Now, I chose, when I was in the spiritual realm, and we all choose what we want to do in a given lifetime. So God never gives us more than we can bear. We choose what we go through. That's part of the expiation that we have to go through to bring our souls back into equilibrium. Now, I chose to be a messenger and a vessel in this particular lifetime. I've done that in other lifetimes. And I deliver the messages from the collective, which includes the hierarchy, members of the hierarchies, the angelic realm, and my guides who've been with me, some of them from my creation. Now, I deliver messages that are very harsh sometimes and brutal, because the truth is harsh and brutal at times, and only by facing the truth can we move on and become, if you want to say, better people. Only by facing the truth will we do better, and in that way ascend the ladder of soul restoration. Now, as I said, each man must evolve according to his own light. Now, we can see the truth when we look in that mirror of self-reflection. And sometimes the reflection that we see, it's not a pretty one. A lot of times it's not a pretty one. I know. Now, say exactly what I say. Do not freely interpret what I say. If I say the sky is blue, I mean blue. I didn't say sky blue, royal blue, marine blue, turquoise blue. I said blue that encompasses all hues, all shades of blue. And if I say that there's a tiny fish in a small aquarium, I mean a tiny fish in a small aquarium. Do not freely interpret that and pass it on to someone else who will freely interpret and pass it on to someone else. And by the time you get to the 10th person, they will say that tiny fish is a big whale in a vast ocean. A whale is a mammal. It's not even a fish. And a vast ocean is certainly not a small aquarium. Now, this channel, I started it to discuss the truth that is reincarnation and its many facts. Now, at times, I will, and often, I will discuss at length current events as I see fit because they are very relevant to the truth that is reincarnation and its facts. Now, this is a very special, what I call cup runneth over, period of greater transitions. You only have a few of them. And sometimes people say it's end times, revelation, the apocalypse, Armageddon. We will go on. But this one is one of those few. But remember now, Armageddon, apocalypse, it's always happening on a smaller scale in different parts of the world. But this time, these very few periods of transition, everything is affected. The environment, climate. Every single person on this earth is affected. It is what we call, I call it a time when there's so much karmic debt incurred. And you can see my books, which I've listed some of them below, that we have to have this mass lesson of forgiveness, unconditional forgiveness, and unconditional love, because there's so much karmic death that, let us say, there probably would never be enough lifetimes to expiate all of that, and especially group karmic death. Now, I always, and until it is not happening, I have to and will always remember Gaza, what's happening in the Middle East. Please do not forget that there is no peace in Gaza. Never mind the ceasefire where Israel continues to fire and do whatever it wants because of a feckless world. And the victims are not allowed to defend themselves. That's what you call a ceasefire. I fire, you cease. The genocide and ethnic cleansing still continues there. And in the West Bank, it is getting beyond compare. I have a message with regards to that. Now, as I said, it's getting worse in Gaza. The famine, the hunger, lack of shelter, babies dying as Israel bombs, doesn't care, doesn't let in aid. And the world, my goodness, the world, those in power. Now, the same thing is, of course, happening in Lebanon, and if they'd have their way, they'd go to Iraq, and of course, they level places in Syria as well, and they do whatever they want to do. Extreme supremacists. However, let us also not forget Sudan, that Israel is involved there all along the east coast of Africa, along with a Gulf state that I'm going to, the messages for that Gulf state actually today. And they're wreaking havoc. 15 million people are now in famine. There is ethnic cleansing and genocide being committed there, especially against black people. and Libya, the problems in Libya, the Horn of Africa, you name it, Israel and its Gulf ally, helping it to attain its greater Israel. Now, I hate wars, and I hate wars with a passion. If you listen to my channel, you know that. And I hate wars with a passion because of what it does to our children, what it does to civilians, but especially what it does to our children and babies. Now, we must not forget the children of the perpetrators like Israel. And of course, we cannot forget the children of the victims of war. We cannot forget, because no child should suffer because of adults and their forever wars. Every child has a right to an education, to food, to shelter, to medicine. They have a right to play. They have a right to be loved. They have a right to be children. I wish we could all start doing that. But going back to Israel again, as far as most Israelis, and perhaps about 80% of them, and it's not me saying so, the polls say so, they believe that even premature babies in Gaza, for example, or in Lebanon for that matter, and if they have their way in the Great Persia, they believe that they're all little snakes. They say that, it's out of their own mouth, and that they should die. But so it is. Now, we must also remember always, that which I do unto my brother, I do unto myself, for I am my brother's keeper. And when we see injustice, we must speak up and out, and if we can do something, then we do. We don't have to speak, but we do. Now, let us get on with what I'm here to discuss today. As I was doing my daily walk last week, I believe it was Wednesday, I have it written down, but I didn't put it in my notes here. I usually walk about 8 kilometers, and this is one of my opportunities to connect with the universe, so to speak. I get a lot of inspiration when I walk. I meditate. Even though I walk at a very fast pace, I get a lot of inspiration. Now, that message was disturbing in a way. And if you recall, I did a video in March of last year where it was during my walk again, where I saw happenings with Al-Aqsa Mosque. And I got the name for the whore of Babylon who sits in the people's house in America, and that name was the golden calf. But the gold is not real, it's fake. And chaos agent, and the man with the cloaca mouth. And I explained what cloaca mouth was in a past video. I think it was in video 15, if I recall. So getting back to this now, I memorialized it, and I knew I had to give you that message, but I didn't want to, because I just didn't want to, because every time I tried to make the video, I would get into sometimes what some emotions and utterances that sometimes shaman get into in certain instances. But I have to do the video. I think I have more control at this time. Now remember, my video on the masks, I will upload that next, I promise, if the guide says so. Now this message was given to me by one of the warriors of justice that I usually speak about or put in my books. At the beginning they deliver messages, and his name is Umar the Great, otherwise known as Umar bin al-Khattab or Umar ibn al-Khattab, one of the warriors of justice, as I said. And he was also the one in the forefront of giving me the message that the energy of Sallbi will arise amongst Muslims. So we can look out for that, because Muslims are targets. Remember now, I don't subscribe to any religion. Muslims are target, and they're facing an existential threat right now. They're targeted in India by Hindu nationalists. There are over 200 million Muslims in India. They're targeted by Buddhist nationalists. And of course, they're targeted by the Zionists and by the Christian nationalists and Zionist Christians, or Christo-fascists, or whatever name you want to give. They're targeted by the right-wing extremists. They're targeted all over. They are facing an existential threat, and it is not to say that there are no Muslim extremists. We know that there are. But other Muslims suffer 90% of the violence that Muslim extremists perpetrate. It is against other Muslims. Don't listen to the hype or the nonsense that it is against Christians or Jews. No, it's not. More than 90%, these are facts, of the violence perpetrated by Muslim extremists suffered by other Muslims. Now, let me say, when I do repeat certain names in history, and that I will say I've gotten messages from them, and I try not to name them. In this case, Umar wanted me to name him, and so I am doing as I was told. Now, as I said, now sometimes we'll say that we're getting messages from certain people who were personages in history. You know, they are historical persons, and you know, we just make it up because sometimes they are not exactly there. Sometimes they're no longer in the spiritual realm. They're actually in the current lifetime, even though we can communicate, even when we are in the temporal world, the earthly plane, we can communicate on the spiritual plane as well with each other, even though we might not know of each other's existence in the current lifetime on earth. But when we go to sleep, or when we are in that mode, we can communicate, as you and I write about that in one of my books. Now, as I said, when I say certain things, that I get messages sometimes from the angelic realm, and you know, my video on teachers and guides, prophets, shamanism, psychic mediums, and what have you, I go into this when I say I will get messages sometimes as well from the angelic realm, I'm not being presumptuous or pretending that I'm special. Now remember, this is the vocation, one of the vocations that I chose. And so I deliver those messages. Now, this, as I said, is part of my Neptunian journey. And I'm not putting it for dramatic effect or saying things for dramatic effects. Now, I take the vocations that I practice seriously. Life and death as a shaman is always around the corner for me in my practice. When we are shaman, when we are prophets, when we are psychic mediums, but especially for shaman, we are constantly in danger. And both, mostly from the spiritual realm, and so we must take care. Our guides will help us in guarding us and taking care, but we as well and our higher selves must also exercise caution. Some of us, because of messages, especially if you are a prophet that you deliver, can sometimes put you in physical danger. Now, I face physical and spiritual danger. I've faced that for many years. Once again, the vocations that we as shaman, psychic medium, prophets, teachers and guides, the vocations we have chosen are not for parlor games, where we just gather and see, well, what lifetime, what was I in another lifetime, or, this is not like kids or people getting around the Ouija board, and then, well, of course, sometimes you invite things on yourself that you ought not to. And so, like if you're going around and it's not real and you're saying you're a witch and you're this and that, be careful of what you do. Now, let me get back to see where I found myself here. Now, we have to respect those vocations. They seem easy and they look easy. When you see someone, even on YouTube, get up and they're predicting things and they're for real. Many great psychic mediums out there. And you think, oh, that's easy enough. There are a lot of things that they do go through. The discipline, right? So you must respect those vocations. Now, as I said, I deliver messages, and my record, or I should say, the record of the collective that gives me those messages speaks for itself. Go through all my videos and my books, and we don't necessarily set out to predict things. This is not what this channel is about, but we have the message. I get the message, I deliver them, and if you will go through them methodically, most of them have been dead on with very fine details, and it is with humility that I say this, and very important with this message that I'm going to deliver further on in this video. It is with humility that I will deliver the message as instructed by that warrior of justice. And you wonder, I speak about justice all the time. Well, if you have any doubts that why should this warrior, this Muslim warrior of justice from the 7th century, give me that message, because that is what I am. I am a warrior of justice, and truth. Now let me move on. I'm going to digress a bit here. I spoke about my late husband I think 2 videos ago. It was in the video on teachers, guides, shaman, prophets, and psychic mediums, and I said he was a shaman. His vocation was not new to him because he came from the highest orders, as it was revealed, of the priests of Amun, not at the time I was in ancient Egypt, who knew the ancient wisdom and beyond. That did not make him a perfect man. We might know all the ancient wisdom, but it doesn't make us perfect. That's why we're here on earth. He was far from a perfect man. But he was part of a divine plan for this special cup runneth over period. In the early part of the 20th century, there was another shaman in Jamaica known as 9-Day William. A popular song was written about him. That's how great the things he did were. And it was called Ribambaree. It said, the duppy them are coming so fast that 9-Day William no had time for sleep. 9-day in give Ribambaree. In other words, he did his tasks in 9 days. Now, he had a fire in front of his house. And if you were going to see him, you'd have to be able to walk through that fire. Well, spirit, the universe. If you could not walk through that fire, he would yell, go back to where you come from. Go back. Now, this sounds unreal, right? But sometimes truth is stranger than fiction, and especially when you do the vocations I do. How do I know that? He was my great uncle, but I didn't know him. He died before I was born. But my father knew him. And it was my father who told me about him. And consequently, after I met my late husband, he knew about him, but he was a child then. But some of our staff, members of our staff, they were older, much older than my husband. Some of them had actually gone to see him. So we knew that it was real. So as I said, he was my great uncle. He was the grand uncle of my father. And how? One day I went to exercise a house, and my dad, he drove me. And when I came back into the car, and he just smiled and he says, last pass, that means you are like a chip off the old block. And that's when he told me about 9-Day William. Now, he was a disciplinarian. Now, 9-Day William had a brother. And he didn't practice the same vocation. However, he used to walk every Friday and Saturday night with a pimento stick. Now I'm going to read because I'll talk and get off and can't find my way again. Now, he walked on Friday and Saturday in his district with a pimento stick. Now, pimento is allspice. That's what all the other name for allspice. Now, that wood is tough, as they would say in Jamaica. It's a hard wood. And what did he do with that stick? People who were out of line, causing mischief, causing trouble, they would feel the stick. Now, I don't subscribe violence, but those were those days. Now, it is like pimento is like what they call mugla wood, that the certain indigenous groups in Australia used to make clubs. And clubs, if you know anything about they were multi-purpose. So they were used in ceremonial, for ceremonial things, to decorate weapons, grooving tools, and the list goes on. It's sort of like in ancient Egypt, they made weapons out of wood as well. And they used, I think it's acacia and tamarisk, and I think it's Christ thorn. That's what they use to make some of their weapons. Now, as I said, I don't believe in violence, but that's what it was. So these were disciplinarians. And back to my late husband now. They used to call him Bungo, or Great House Pharaoh. Some people, now they didn't know about ancient Egypt, but just imagine that. Now, that is an interesting reincarnation fact and a sort of synchronicity that I will explore in an upcoming book on reclaiming past lives and using Akhenaten and Nefertiti as the case study. Sorry for that. Now, anyone who came into my late husband's office, what he called his workroom, with nefarious intent, wanting to hurt people, or especially children. Now, my husband felt the same way I felt about children. He had what he called a supplejack. Now, supplejack whisk is also known in North America, and it's used to weave baskets. It's used to, it's a vine actually. It's used to weave baskets. It's used for rope making and other crafts. Now, in Jamaica in the olden days, they would actually have it, and they would use it to beat donkeys cruel. And sometimes people, well, now he had a supplejack. Now, I didn't, he did that before I knew him, because he was much older than I was. If you came in with nefarious intentions, he would whip you with that, tell you, get out of his office. Now, why have I digressed to tell you all of this about these, if you want to say, disciplinarians? Because Umar bin al-Khattab was known for discipline. They say he used to walk through Medina with a whip. Now, he was the second caliph after the death of Muhammad. One of his daughters was actually one of Muhammad's wife. Now, it was during his rule that Muslims conquered Jerusalem in 637 CE. He established the Pact of Umar that prohibited forced conversion, remember this, and allowed the three faiths to practice their religion in peace. Now, there weren't very many, remember now, Byzantine occupied Jerusalem. So there weren't very many Jews there at that time. As a matter of fact, the Temple Mount had become sort of like a garbage heap. Now, put that in your brain. Remember all what I'm telling you now. Now, that pact, that Umar Pact of Umar, reminds me of the treaty that Saladin signed with Richard the Lionheart, where Christians were allowed to go to Jerusalem and peace, right? it reminds me of that. So, it was under his watch as well that Islam had its greatest expansion. They conquered the Sassanid Empire, what we know, Great Persia, and they stretched from Libya all the way down to the Indus Valley, Indus River, I should say, through the Caucasus, you name it. It was under his watch that Islam spread. Now, he oversaw the cleanup of the Temple Mount. The Jews at long last could return to pray at the Temple Mount after being forbidden to pray there by the Byzantines. Now, we need to learn history so that we are not bamboozled by miscreants like Netanyahu and other supremacists who often erase history or try to erase history or co-opt it to write it in their own image. He was against corruption. He believed in order and discipline. He believed in justice. He was known for his pursuit of justice. So if you wonder why he should be present, as I said before, to give me messages, wonder no more. I've met my soul family. He and others currently alive, some who were alive but passed on, and those who are in the spiritual realm are my soul family. Because remember, spirits, you tend to stick. It's not like the laws of magnetism, where unlike poles attract. That can happen, but mostly when we talk about reincarnation and spirits, it is like poles attract. Now, as I said, he believed in order and discipline, and he believed in justice. So wonder not why he should be delivering messages to me, giving messages to me along with others. Now that is my calling. He made certain that his family didn't live any differently from the people under his rule. And to minimize corruption, he paid staff well, and he was an egalitarian, we might say. No one was superior, and I'm going to take a little break here and resume. Now, according to Gibbon's, and I've listed those references, I will list them below. This is what they say about him. He also knew that having a vision is not enough unless it is supported by effective strategies. He didn't only have a vision, he truly transformed his visions into actions, and that's very important. It's okay to say things and make plans, but you've got to put them into action. For example, to ensure that nobody sleeps hungry in his empire, he used to walk through the streets almost every night to see if there is anyone needy or ill. And he used to monitor public policy very closely, and he kept the needs of the people central to his leadership approach. As second caliph of Islam, he refused to chop off the hands of thieves because he felt he had fallen short of his responsibility to provide meaningful employment to all his subjects. Well, that makes sense. If he did his job, that's what he's saying. No one would have an excuse or a reason to steal. In Jamaica, they'd say, if poor and a crime, then thief and a crime. In other words, if you do not look on poverty as a crime, because no one should be poor really, where they cannot afford to feed their families, then you cannot look on someone who steals bread to feed his family as a crime. Now, as a ruler of a vast kingdom, his vision was to ensure that everyone in his kingdom should sleep on a full stomach. If a dog dies hungry on the banks of the river Euphrates, he would say, Umar will be responsible for dereliction of duty. Oh, if the politicians that we have were like this warrior of justice, we would live in a better world. But they don't do their jobs, because if they did, there would be very little need for charities. Now, Gibbon, as I said, in his Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, written back in 1883, he refers to Umar in the following terms. Now, what I just read from you was from taken from the Life and Times of Umar ibn al-Khattab by Dr. Sallbi. Okay, I said I will put the references at the bottom of the video. Now, according to Gibbons, he said, yet the abstinence and humility of Umar were not inferior to the virtues of Abu Bakr. He was the first caliph after Muhammad. His food consisted of barley bread or dates. His drink was water. He preached in a gown that was torn or tattered in 12 places. And the Persian satrap, who paid his homage to the conqueror, found him asleep among the beggars on the steps of the mosque of Medina. His rule was one of the few moments in the history of Islam, where Muslims were united as a single community. Some see his greatest achievement, though, from a religious perspective, as the compilation, some people say compilation, of the Quran. Now, what had happened, I can't remember which badly it was, but a lot of because people used to memorize the Quran, and during this battle, a lot of the memorizers passed away, and so he put out the idea, I think it was to Abu Bakr, that they probably should get it written down. Now, some Shia, view him as a usurper of Ali's right to the caliphate. Others do not view him in this light. Okay, and I won't get into that with that schism. As far as he's concerned, in the spiritual realm, and now, the urgency of now, that should all be put asunder, because Muslims need to unite in order to survive, because they are facing an existential threat by a large number. Their target, and they face annihilation and or subjugation, and this is what you'd call the urgency of now. Now, I will tell you when he was introduced to me, when he introduced himself to me years ago. He was dressed in a flowing white robe and a white turban. He was a very tall man. And somehow his beard, though, it was kind of reddish. It was scant but reddish. And he had a really huge mustache. And part of it was also red. And I'm wondering, well, that was what we now know as Saudi Arabia. Strange coloring, but we know how it goes. And I'm thinking, I asked. He introduced himself and said he is Umar. And so I said, are you, and I said, are you dressed in white? He says, yes, I am the one dressed in white. The white robe and the white turban. He was tall and big. Reading up on him after, because I didn't remember about him. And I looked up his name because I have to verify, and that's how you can, and I will tell you how at times you can verify, especially when you're dealing with personages, people who are in history, that, there are historical accounts of them, to see if, am I seeing right? Am I hearing right? It's like in one of my videos when I was going back into the energies, into one of my past lives during Tudor England, and I was, some people would say, channeling back, and I was talking about my daddy. And after I said, did they used to use daddy back then? It was such a formal society. And I went researching. Lo and behold, yes, it was in that same century, less than 50 years before, that it came into usage, daddy. So I was on the right track. That is, it confirms, and it's good to confirm. You shouldn't doubt, but we are but humans. You sometimes want confirmation. And so I went searching. I looked up Umar. He didn't give me his full name. Umar is such a common name. And here I was thinking to myself, well, maybe he's from North Africa. It could be from anywhere in the Muslim world. And when I researched and I, tall Umar and all these different things, and lo and behold, there he was. And they described his beard, like the redness, the scant beard and the mustache, the ends that were red. I think they said he was more or less bald. The head, and I suppose it's probably henna that made the beard and the mustache red. And they said he was a wrestler. He was good at wrestling. I will also say, as I said, one of his daughters was married to Muhammad, and he was one of the staunchest opponents of Muhammad at the beginning, when Muhammad started to spread his words. Now, in Hamas's attempt, now we're going to get on to the messages now, but I have to give you a background and other messages that were given, and you will understand. Now, this part that I'm giving you now was written in one of my essays at the beginning of the war on Gaza. It was written in January, February of 2024. Now, in Hamas's, and it's also recorded in one of my videos. In Hamas's attempt to derail this normalization process with the attack on October 7th, so remember the timeline now that this was written in, The politicians and profiteers involved, never ones to miss an opportunity, saw this as a golden one. With my uneducated mind, for I know nothing about geopolitics, what I call geopolitics, and politics, I call that politricks, international relations, diplomacy, law, or business, I have indulged my mind to imagine what took place when the power players involved in this normalization process, hereby known as the big boys and big girls, met in the back room to plan how to capitalize on this sad and tragic but golden opportunity and plan their strategy going forward. Now the name of the video is Big Boys and Big Girls and the Golden Opportunity. Okay? And remember now, all that I've said before and what I'm going to say now is for entertainment purposes only. I grudgingly say that. Now this was when a life serves you lemon, make lemonade moment. Nothing was going to derail normalization. Everyone was clear-eyed. These are the big boys and the big girls. They were all clear-eyed and focused. Each one had their reason or reasons to see this process through to the end. These reasons could include a place in history of having solved what appears to have been the unsolvable Middle East problem. Lots of future profits from larger markets, free trade, peace and security for Israel, but not necessarily so for the Palestinians, or for that matter, any other Muslim state. Satisfying the vampire that is revenge with its bloodlust that is a bottomless pit, and showcasing live and direct from the laboratory that is Gaza and its people, the lab rats and guinea pigs, all the innovations and the power and precision of new weapons of destruction, the AI decision maker, and subjugation technology. Indeed, there was something for everyone. The other big boys and big girls included some in the Arab and Muslim world. That was from 2024, the beginning of 2024. Remember that. Well, they knew then that if they'd have to cool it on the normalization thing if Palestinians were murdered en masse. But anyhow, it went along because they didn't think that the partner, Netanyahu, that they had, they didn't know what his intentions were. He outsmarted all of them. Now, the second way the big boys and big girls decided to impose a settlement on Palestinians, because they were tired of Palestinians. They wanted to make money. They wanted to get on, including some of those Gulf states. It's all about money. Big men need to make money. And don't forget, the man who has those dead eyes, the son-in-law of the whore of Babylon in the White House that's making so much mischief under the quiet there. Don't forget, no. He needs to make money. That's what he's all about. Couldn't care less. That's the same one who tried to deny PPE, and this is documented, PPE to all the blue states that had so many black and brown peoples during COVID, because he thought, well, more of them would die, and so there would be fewer of them to vote. It was an election year, and I don't put them out of ground for talk. It's documented. It's there. Now, the second way to impose a settlement on the Palestinians in any future negotiations or one-sided non-negotiations was to slaughter and punish them into submission, settling once and for all the seemingly intransigent issue of what to do with this troublesome child, or for Israel, this pest that should be exterminated. In slaughtering and punishing the Gazans into submission, it was the big boys and big girls accepted going to be very bloody. Indeed, not for the faint of heart, but worth it. They were all agreed to go ahead, and they knew what would happen, but they didn't know that Netanyahu and his help would take it so far. Thief and thief, God laugh. When God sees thieves in cahoots, he laughs. But Netanyahu outsmarted all of them. You gotta know who you get in bed with and make deals with. In the final analysis, the suffering of Palestinians would be so great that they would take anything that was offered in a settlement. The big boys and big girls concluded that they could use one stone to kill many birds. Many Palestinians would lose their lives, but that was how it had to be. Israel could satisfy its bloodlust and craving for revenge, and in so doing bring the people in Gaza to their knees. They would give up on Hamas, disclose where the hostages were, a conclusion that could only be based on the belief or assumption that there are no innocent civilians in Gaza, which we would have to assume included premature babies. Mr. Herzog, the Israeli president, based on his public statement on October 13th, 2023, is of the view that the entirety of the population is guilty because they did not revolt against Hamas. And by the way, that's why the West, especially America, that was part of their reason to punish the Palestinians, because they didn't revolt against Hamas, and they say they are the ones who voted them in. And so they didn't say anything either when Israel, with their complicity, started that siege on Gaza from early 2000, was it 2006 or whenever it was. That's a modern day siege. They call it blockade. Now, by this reasoning, Mr. Herzog's reasoning, because Gazans, including premature babies, didn't revolt against Hamas, then they're all guilty. By his reasoning, one might also assume that the people in the West Bank deserve the daily indignities, oppression and subjugation under which they live in the apartheid state that Israel has imposed on them, because they have not risen up and revolted against their Israeli guards, overseers, overlords, and masters. Now, I did memorialize as well in several videos, as I said, and 2025, that the Gulf states are not immune from what is happening in Lebanon, Gaza, Syria, and Iran. And let us even say in the east coast of Africa, in al-Sudan. Israel would be coming for them soon enough, as well as Egypt and Jordan, once when Jordan no longer serves the purpose of intercepting missiles to save Israel. Now remember, I didn't write this just now. I memorialized these videos, books in 2024 and 2025, and we see it all playing out. I didn't include Turkey then, but I got that message in July of last year, which I recorded. And now we hear the analysts and the pundits, and out of the mouth of the Zionist Israelis, out of their politicians, that Turkey is next. And by the way, in my video, as the guide showed me, how they would encircle Turkey, and Cyprus is very crucial in that. Now, recently, as the guys saw, the analysts are seeing and talking about how Turkey is being encircled for future attacks by Israel. How wonderful the universe and the warriors of justice, the collective, are in seeing all of this. Before, let the record speak for itself if you have any doubts. Now, negative exceptionalism, envy, and covetousness are all part of the supremacist ideology and practices. The bombing and the attempted assassination of Hamas negotiators. Remember what they did to Carter? They didn't flinch to attack them. That is after what I wrote. And remember, Israel has always attacked negotiators, starting with the Mr. Folk in 1948, the United Nations negotiator, because they do not want peace. Will nobody, the world doesn't seem to understand that. They have an aim, they stated the aim, and in my books I've written out of their own mouths their aims, how they were gonna do it, how they were gonna terrorize the Palestinians, and what they were going to do, and how far they would go. They don't flinch and accepting what the US did. They said, we'll do that for now, but we have our other aims. Pacify them. Now, you can see my book into further bird's eye view into the future. Negative exceptionalism and covetousness, as I said, are all part of the playbook, the supremacist playbook. Israel believes that only it and it alone should prosper. What we call in Jamaica bad-mindedness. So you destroy everything around you so that you alone stand. Well, that's not much. Why don't you have healthy competition? And that's when you can truly say that you're good at whatever you do. As Israel marches through the Muslim world, it will bomb, as I said, every historic site, including in the Great Persia, to try to erase the rich history of the Middle East. Zionist usurpers, right? Trying to erase thousands of years of history with what? Rubble and lies. As I said again, it hasn't realized that the Great Persia has survived the Mongols and Alexander the Great. Survived Russia as well. Hitler aligned with Stalin. Stalin provided wheat and oil, among other things. They were strange bedfellows in World War II. Russia was aligned with the Axis powers in the beginning until 1941. But you want all, you lose all, and supremacists, and both of them, Stalin and Hitler, they were supremacists. They will end up, it's cannibalistic, they'll end up eating each other. Dog named dog. Dog eats dog. Because only one must stand. It is sort of like if I watch The Immortal. That was one of my favorite shows. And they'd say something like, only one immortal can eventually stand. Well, that's how supremacists are. So eventually they'll turn on each other. So Hitler wanted it all. Why should he have to depend on the Slavs? Because they were at the bottom of the hierarchy of white people. Why should he have to depend on them for oil and wheat? He wanted it all, but in Jamaica they say want all, lose all. Greed. That's one thing that supremacists never understand. Israel is going to find that out shortly. Now, he launched in 1941, June I believe it was, Operation Barbarossa. And in 6 months, by December, as many as 8 million people, Russians, Germans, and members of the Axis powers who had come to help Hitler, had died. Imagine that, 8 million people in 6 months had died. It was a total failure. And then the Nazis knew from that time that they would lose the war. They knew up in the higher echelons, but they still continued for another 4 years to wreak havoc and kill tens of millions more. They knew they would lose, but they continued on. The Nazis knew then, as I said, that they would lose the war. But being the death and suicide cult that supremacist ideology and practices is, he would continue to wreak havoc. It's sort of like Israel Samson's doctrine. Real supremacists, the state of Israel is, if you doubt that. And I will outline that in another video and another book that I'm writing on supremacists, the supremacist playbook, right? Supremacist ideology and practices playbook. And thoughts on the past. Israel is Nazi Germany on steroids, but it is not Sparta. It believes it is Sparta, but it is not Sparta. That's another book, upcoming book in another month. Now, Hitler, in 1942, after Barbarossa, he launched another. He didn't give up. He's persistent. He launched another campaign. This one was called Fall Blau, Taste Blue, an offensive on Stalingrad to take over the oil field, Volgograd, that's the name now, to take over the oil field of the Caucasus, while also attempting to impede the logistics of the Soviet army. He forgot about the logistics of the Third Reich's Sixth Army. Oh, I tell you, they're very incompetent at times, you know. He was outmaneuvered by the Soviet army. Imagine Slavs, even though Stalin was Georgian, imagine Slavs outsmarting the cream of the crop, the Aryans. Can you imagine that? Any military commander knows that logistics is one of the keys to victory. You better make certain that you got that in place and you got that right. If not, don't even bother going to war. You're going to lose. The Third Reich was often incompetent when it came to logistics. Now, Israel envies the Gulf states for the oil and the vast wealth that it has generated, even though they have found oil off the coast there and with Lebanon and Gaza. And it has an agreement, I think, with Lebanon. But no, guess what? It doesn't have to honor that agreement. No, they get to control everything. Right? That's what they're banking on. Now, ever wonder his ultimate aim for those Gulf states is to dispossess them of the source of their wealth and subjugate them. Ever wonder why he marauds through the Levant, destroying everything in his path? Other than the fact that Israel has never had to pay for the damages in pecuniary manner that he has wrought. In Netanyahu's mind, he says, let the dirty Arabs pay for it. And I think it's Arbush or something. It's a derogatory term that they use, racists use in Israel. They have all this wealth, he says. So they build. So Netanyahu destroys. So the Gulf states build and rebuild. So he destroys. Praying that this cycle will also accelerate the wealth, as one day the wells must run dry, so they'll get poorer, I should say. This is the same attitude as the whore of Babylon and the American Manchurian regime. Only they must have. Dispossess everybody of everything they have and hoard it for yourself. Lebanon, bad-mindedness. Lebanon, Gaza, and Israel, as I said, also have oil. Now, on March 2nd, 2026, and I have this in, I think, video 16, I believe, I said, as I was given this message, Gulf countries must beware of the technology that they're purchasing from Israel and the weapons. This they will eventually use, that's the Israelis, will eventually use to foment instability and eventually take them down. That's the Gulf states, take down the Gulf states. They have only to listen to the whore of Babylon, the chaos agent, the golden calf, but the gold is not real but fake gold, the entity with the cloaca mouth. And as I said, and I'll just briefly go over this, I did not fully grasp the meaning of the Jamaican expression to describe someone who talked incessantly. The Jamaicans would say, the man just a chat like him damn foul, B-A-T-T-Y. I think that's a vulgar term, so I'm kind of squeamish when it comes to using vulgar terms. I did say whore of Babylon because that's a term used in biblical terms. Now, the you know what the cloaca is the butt of a chicken. Okay? The butt of a chicken, so what they're saying here is that the man must have eaten the butt of a chicken And that caused him to have diarrhea of the mouth. That's what they're saying. The man just a chat like him name foul. Batty. Now, chickens and many birds poop as soon as they eat. It goes in, it goes out. If we had bowel movements in like manner, we would call it diarrhea. Sometimes we are born with the mark of Cain, as I like to call it, that label us, tell the world who we are. The whore of Babylon, who is the head of the back to the good old days politics, has the mouth shaped like a cloaca. We should never let him know our secrets because he will spill them. And in Jamaica, they say that for one with a cloaca mouth, if you are relieving your body because you can't do better at the moment, and you see someone like that coming, sit down in it and make them pass. Because they will chat your business, take your business, go abroad, they'll spread it. Right? So if they're coming, sit in it and let them go by. Everyone will know your affairs. When the whore of Babylon did suggest that America should sell subpar equipment or weapons to its allies, this was talk that he heard but cannot help himself. Buyers of Israeli weapons and American technology too, American weapons and technology nowadays under these people, beware, you might be in for a rude awakening, ripe for the picking when Israel is ready to topple you. It is like the warning about 5G and the danger and the national security posed. I will add here that America does not need to worry about 5G and the security problems it poses. Their secrets are already abroad. The regime is a Manchurian one, not concerned with the strategic interests of America because the alignments stretch across borders for world domination as described in my books. America has to worry about the 3 G's: greed, grift, and grievance. Now, I have repeated all of this, which you've heard in other videos or in my books, because the record is now speaking for itself. Once again, this is what Umar the Great, one of the warriors of justice that I mention in my books all the time, has to say to the Gulf states and especially to the United Arab Emirates. And once again, it is with the greatest humility that I deliver this message. Let the record speak for itself as it has and will continue to do. As I walked, as I say, I walk 8 miles. 8 kilometers, that's 5 miles every single day. And as I was going around the track, I heard from Umar, detour, detour, detour. It is not Iran you should fear, but the enemy in your bosom. You have become a prisoner of your own ambitions, punching above your weight, biting off more than you can chew. Now you're caught in a trap. The enemy in your bosom only wants your money and the source of your money. As we said before, dirty Arabs The man who would be king says, with him you are responsible. Remember now, this is to the UAE especially. You are responsible for much suffering throughout the coast of Africa, East Coast, up into Libya. You are responsible for genocide of your black brothers in al-Sudan. The famine, the suffering, millions, you and your fellow Zionist supremacists. No lover of Muslims. Think you that you are the magical Arab or Muslim? That is what they call the exception. Exceptionalism. Helping to build the greater Israel at the expense of your Muslim brothers. You have isolated yourself. You are digging your own grave. You have become the lone believer who will now be attacked by the temptress you have allowed to isolate you from your brothers. A man sitting on a log in the middle of the ocean. A sheep who has allowed the wolf to isolate him from the flock. A wandering sheep you have become, now easy prey for the wolf. Who will help you when the enemy in your bosom comes for you? Ay, chamama. Detour, detour, detour. Look, have you not eyes to see? Have you not the knowledge of history and wisdom to understand? A tempest in a teapot, caught in a trap of your own making. The wolf already has you in its mouth. The thieves are already in your house. They are no longer satisfied with extortion money. They have come to take all. The house, the money, and the source of the money. You are the detour on the way to Turkey. Change course before it is too late. The energy of Saladin shall arise. Unity amongst Muslims. Nothing can stop that. Maktub, Maktub. What is written is written. And I say, thank you, Umar. And I will add here, by the way, the Zionists in America, Christians, Jews, or whoever else, and the oligarchs who just think about money, purely about money, they're in on all of this with Israel. Now, as I had said before, when I first met this warrior of justice, when he appeared, made himself, revealed himself to me, I went and I checked, to confirm in real life terms. And this is not the first time, as I said before, that I got in a message, dirty Arabs. That's what Netanyahu says of the Gulf states. So I went and I checked. I went and I Googled. I said, look for this. Is this a derogatory term? And who uses it? And lo and behold, in Israel, it is a racist term that they use. I think they say Arbush or something like that, as I mentioned before. That's what they call Arabs. Confirmation. that the guides were speaking. I'm not making this up. Now, yesterday, which would be May, and I better know this, May 16th. No, was it May 16th? Yes, May 16th. Yes, May 16th. I got this message. But I'll just say, before I give you the quote, in early 2024, I stated in my videos, books and essays that civil war awaits Israel. Well, I think I'm hearing that now in the past few months. Okay, so early 2024, I said civil war awaits Israel. And I also go into my book Start on the Past, why you can see that civil war brewing. And part of the brewing, and this is just historical, this is just history repeating itself, is any state usually that uses paramilitary forces as part of its armed wing, that sometimes they admit and sometimes they deny. They usually end up in that scenario. Sudan is a prime and key example and fancy that Israel should be heavily involved in it, along with the UAE, in fomenting the genocide and the civil war. It started the civil war in Sudan to break it up. That's Israel's aim, to break it up. So that, because Sudan is a very populous country and it's Muslim, mostly. So, I said that fate awaits Israel. That's one of the reasons. So now, this message is for the billionaires. Now remember, I said that from 2024 about that civil war, who along with the government of Israel, who are using the barbarians that they call the settlers, because that's what they are. You think of the settlers and you are taken back to some time like long, long ago when you think of those barbarians, like the hordes during the Crusades, because they're barbarians, the settlers. They're reminiscent of the Christian hordes that sacked Constantinople and many Christian cities and towns under the guise of the Crusades, that they're fighting for the Crusades. And the message is, your bill, remember now, this message is to all those Zionist Jewish billionaires and all those who support what they're doing in the West Bank, whether they're in America and elsewhere. Your bill will soon come due, and your checkbook will not be enough to pay the debt. Sudan awaits you. The same mischief that Israel has made in Sudan will be your future. Change course before it's too late. And I will recall that in one of my videos I said that the one state that Israel imagines is not the one they will get. Perhaps for a short time, the one they imagine, that one state but not for long. It will become part of a one state. How it becomes, it's not a matter of if, it's just when and how. How they become a part will depend on their actions from that date, which was back in, I have the date written down, from that date moving forward, and that there will be a great exodus. And this was delivered by a prophet who had lived 2,800 years ago in the Levant, that there will be a great exodus, not like the small one, and that was a small from long ago. A great exodus. Whether that happens or not depends on their actions. And I will be ending this shortly. Even the Nazis had a red line, and that red line concerned animals. Hitler and other Nazis were lovers of animals, and many of them became vegetarians, with Goebbels, Paul Joseph Goebbels, declaring that meat eating is a perversion in our human nature, and that Christianity was a symptom of decay since it did not urge vegetarianism. Beginning in 1993, the Nazis enacted what was at first a slew of animal rights and protection laws and regulations. There was even a special law of how to cook lobsters and crab, which were to be quickly thrown in a rapidly boiling water. Not that that the crowds were going into a concentration camp. No. Severe punishment included if you contravene any of those animal rights laws, right? And protection laws. If you contravene any of them, severe punishment included a stay in a concentration camp. Israel and its IDF have sniped sheep simply crossing the street. They've slaughtered them simply crossing the street. They've used dogs. And as the column actually that Nick Kristof wrote in the New York Times, he describes some of this. And of course, we have the evidence as before from, I think, last year with the whistleblowers. They've used dogs to grape Palestinian medics. And just yesterday or Friday, this weekend, there's a video of settler clubbing and severely injuring a dog. It's not the first time they've done that to animals, whether it be the sheep of Bedouins and family pets. These actions would have sent these Israeli Zionist perpetrators to concentration camps in Nazi Germany. Indeed, even the Nazis had a red line. Israel, and according to the polls, most of its Zionist Jews population or Zionist Israeli population have none. And that is one of the reasons why I say, and you will read it in my upcoming book, that Israel more than Nazi Germany, is the poster child, tops Nazi Germany as the poster child for supremacist ideology and practices. And I will prove it step by step according to the playbook. And I will not hold me mouth a ground for talk. Left me make me talk. I will not face plant to say it because the proof is staring us in the face, and I will lay them out. And I pray that they will see salvation. And all those who support these atrocities, especially against children and babies, I pray that their conscience, they will retrieve their conscience and follow its light. I sincerely pray that. Now I'm going to read you a poem. And it was one of a collective of poems that I was given, 14 of them, in December 2023, in the space of less than 2 weeks, by the warriors of justice, shortly after the horrific attack by Hamas and other fighters, which I said and still say, civilians, especially children and babies, are not combatants. And there's no reason or excuse, no matter by whom, for them to become victims of conflict. Now this is called weaponized. Souls from the low rung of the ladder of soul evolution. Souls who have come to partake of the goodness, not of the toil. Souls believing they can cheat karma. Souls who have come to weaponize historical grudges, prejudices, suffering, and victimhood, so that history will repeat itself, a broken record, never again, but yet again. Historical grudges, prejudices, suffering, and victimhood, weaponized to create new victims, weaponized to co-opt identity, weaponized to create confusion between pretender and heir, weaponized to erase the history of others, weaponized to recreate history in their own image, weaponized to coerce atonement through silent acquiescence to further inhumanity, weaponized to maximize ill-placed guilt, weaponized to bully, weaponized to colonize, weaponized to oppress, weaponized to rape, pillage, and burn, weaponized to be lawless, weaponized to be inhumane, weaponized to force compliance, weaponized to silence the truth tellers, weaponized to copyright suffering and victimhood, weaponized to patent brutality and persecution, weaponized to monopolize suffering and victimhood, weaponized to escape scrutiny, weaponized to repeat tenfold the crimes of history without critics, weaponized to commit atrocities in the glaring sun of broad daylight, weaponized to commit atrocities without the secrecy of the dark of night, weaponized to repeat history we should forgive, but not forget, weaponized to silence the critics, weaponized to escape accountability, weaponized to project abuser onto victim and victim onto abuser, weaponized to keep boots on the necks of the innocent while crying wolf, weaponized to rob the have-nots of the nothing that they have, weaponized to further dispossess the dispossessed, weaponized to rob the sick and the dying of the peace that they seek and deserve, weaponized to kill the dead over and over again, weaponized to steal the future of the children, weaponized to camouflage ignoble intent and agendas. Never again, but yet again, always again. Please do not forget the children. Do not forget Gaza, the West Bank, Lebanon, Syria, Iran. Do not forget the Sudan, the DRC, Tigray, the Rohingyas, and all other places where children are suffering, and where there is genocide and ethnic cleansing. Please do not forget that this video is for entertainment purposes only. Thank you once again for visiting my channel. Please do not forget to subscribe, give a thumbs up for like, share, please share, and leave a comment. As usual, I like to end with this. Hate, because, as I said, my messages are harsh, very harsh and brutal. But only when we look in the mirror of self-reflection and face often the not so pretty sight that we see, can we move up, ascend that ladder of soul restoration and bring equilibrium to our soul. Hate hitching a ride, hate a contagion, a cancer metastasizing, an opportunistic bacteria, the cloud waiting to block the sun, hate waiting to hitch a ride on the train of love, hate the rat on its rat passage, hitching a ride on the boat to the plague, hate the bedbug waiting for our suitcase, hate the roach riding on our coattails, hate the shadow always lurking behind, sometimes longer than us, just lurking behind the thin curtain, waiting for its turn on center stage to take us to a place not so far away, a blast back from civilization to barbarism, from knowledge back to ignorance, from wisdom back to imprudence. Hate never takes a holiday, always looking for the opportunity to hitch a ride on the train of love. Hate inhabits the same house as love within us. None of us is without blemish. All of us live in glass houses. We are all brothers in this brotherhood of man. God, the Creator, that something that is greater than us, has no chosen few. He gave unto us the vehicle of reincarnation to help us bring our souls back into equilibrium. That something that is greater than us is not vindictive, selective, or supremacist in ideology and practices. That something that is greater than us bequeath unto none of us lands. That something that is greater than us would be actually short-sighted, cynical, and cruel if he bequeathed unto us, any of us, lands, because seas and oceans rise and drown and cover lands. Volcanoes erupt and cover lands with ash and lava, and earthquakes swallow us and our belongings. No, do not believe anyone who feeds you that Kool-Aid that God gave a group any parcel of land, or that any group is chosen. We're all chosen, and all lands on this earth is sacred, is holy. We cannot fight for or on behalf of that something that is greater than us. That something that is greater than us is omnipotent and does not need us to fight on his behalf. That is arrogance. The same arrogance that made us fallen angels here on this earth, trying to find our way back to our destiny and the Father. We're all tenants on this earth, not here to have dominion or to rule over anything or anyone. We are not here to have dominion over the fowl of the air, the fish in the sea, or the beasts in the fields. We are not here to rule and have supremacy over our brothers. Let us be good tenants. Let us take care of each other. And let us take care of ourselves. Let us trod ever so lightly and take care of this planet we call Earth, our temporary home, and all the creatures that dwell thereon. Remember that there is something that is greater than us, and that is the fatherhood of God. We respect and show our love for that something that is greater than us by taking care of ourselves and of each other, the planet, and all the creatures, once again, that dwell thereon. May we never try to flee our conscience so that we will always do correct actions. May we learn to walk a mile in our brother's shoes so that we can see the humanity in each other. May we respect the differences in each other and know that our Creator has no chosen few. May we find comfort in the knowledge that each of us is slated for redemption and none is excluded. May we find solace in the knowledge that it is not a question of if, but one of when each of us shall return to our Father. May we know that we are just tenants on this earth and take care of each other, the earth, and all the creatures that dwell thereon. May we always adhere to the divine principles of the fatherhood of God, the brotherhood of man, doing unto others as we would have them do unto us, love. May we know that which I do unto my brother, I do unto myself, for I am my brother's keeper. May the tiny shrouds of light forever illuminate our path through the dark. May peace forever reside within us and between us. One divine, universal love.